Have you ever cut off someone in traffic and it was your fault? You know, you're driving along, maybe you change lanes, maybe you cut in front of somebody else and you realize, whoops, that was my fault. And all of a sudden you're thinking, how's that driver behind me going to respond? Is he going to pull up alongside, pull out a gun and shoot me with road rage? Are we going to have a little confrontation here? Well, I know I've done that before. I remember, in fact, when I was in seminary, one morning I was late to class. I was hurrying to get to class. Seminary's tough. And I was tired. And my class started at 8 o'clock, and it was already 8 o'clock, and I wasn't there. I pulled up to a red light and looked down to my left. Cars were coming, but I decided I could hurry, and if I hurried, I could make a right-hand turn on red and get on down to seminary. Well, as I made the turn, I realized I'd really made a mistake because the car coming at me was coming really, really fast, and I'd cut him off. And he pulled up beside me and kind of looked at me, and I looked at him, and I thought, uh-oh, we're going to have an altercation, especially at the red light, which is coming up right in front of us. So I decided I'd stop my car about 30 or 40 feet before the intersection, knowing that he'd pull on up to the intersection and we wouldn't have a little face-to-face. But that's not what happened. He pulled up right beside me. He leaned across his front seat, motioned for me to roll down my front driver's window while he rolled down his front passenger window, and we were going to have a little chat. And I'm thinking, how do I handle this? And fortunately, I know Proverbs 15:1, which says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So as they pulled together, windows going down, before he could speak, I spoke first. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I misjudged. I cut you off. It was totally my fault. And then I looked at him and I said, will you forgive me? Well, that caught him off guard. And he stuttered a moment and he said, well, yeah, okay, I forgive you, but don't ever do it again. Proverbs are so apropos to everyday living. For example, I remember once one of our counselors came to me and was struggling with two different families who were having a feud. And he asked me a question. He said, Roger, I've counseled both of them. Should I get involved in settling this dispute? And I said, well, I know a proverb. I know that Proverb 26:17 says, like a man who grabs a mad dog by the ears is a man who meddles in a quarrel not his own. And Steve looked at me and said, thanks. He knew what to do. I remember sitting in a meeting with all of our elders around a big table. We were discussing a number of issues in the direction of our church, and one of the elders, who didn't really like me, got up, and he walked around the table and came and stood right behind me. Now, I know that in every church there's a man who is the pastor, there's the man who thinks he's the pastor, and there's the man who wants to be pastor. And I knew that this man was the one who wanted to be the pastor. So he walks behind me and he's criticizing my leadership and he's criticizing my direction. He's criticizing the relocation. And I'm sitting there and I can't believe it. He's standing right behind me, talking about me, right behind my back. And as he began to ridicule my leadership, I'm sure my face turned beet red, and I wasn't quite sure how to handle that, except in Proverbs 19:11, Solomon wrote, it is to a man's glory to overlook an offense. Well, my head was down, and I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but I decided I'd get some glory out of this, so I kept my mouth shut, and I was patient, and finally finished, and he turned to walk back around the table, and then it began to dawn on me, everybody in the room was thinking what a fool he'd just made of himself. I didn't get defensive. I didn't talk back. I didn't get critical of him. I just was patient. And I suppose in God's own way, I got a little glory out of that. Now, it's nice to know Proverbs because we end up in these situations that face us in everyday life, and Proverbs has a tremendous amount of great advice to give on how to handle these situations. One day, one of our counselors came into my office and he said, Roger, I need to rebuke you, and I need to do it in the biblical sense of the word. So we sat in different chairs, and he said, we talked about some things I'd done wrong, discussed why some of these things are really sins, and I need to reconsider what I've done. And, well, I knew Proverbs 17:10. A word of rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 1,000 blows on the back of a fool. I love that proverb, because that tells me when someone comes to rebuke me, I need to listen. Because oftentimes he's right. Now, if he's not right, I can deal with that and ignore it and go on. But if he's right, and Steve was right, I'd done something wrong. And I took the rebuke well. And I asked forgiveness. And I confessed my sin. Now, when you read the book of Proverbs and learn the book of Proverbs, you get what I call street smart. You see, the book of Proverbs is designed by God to tell us how to get along in relationships with fellow men and women, and children, and parents. The book of Psalms tells us how to get along with God. And so for most of my ministry, I have encouraged people to read 5 Psalms and 1 chapter of Proverb every day. And if you do that, at the end of the month, you will have read all 150 Psalms. You'll have read all 31 Proverbs. Because the book of Proverbs is God designed to help us make wise decisions as we move along through life. So go study your Proverbs. Learn them well. And when these situations face you, then you'll know how to handle them. And you won't stumble around not figuring out how to deal with the people around you. Because that's what Proverbs is in the Bible for.